I really need it. Please let me do just a little.
No, don't ever try to touch me, or you will regret it for the rest of your life.
Johnson was a kind man who loved his parents dearly. He was their only child, and they had raised him with all the love in the world. Now, his parents were getting older, and they wished for grandchildren. One evening, they sat with Johnson and said, "Son, it's time for you to marry and give us grandchildren. We're not getting any younger." Johnson promised to think about it. After a while, Johnson met Sophia, a beautiful woman with a charming smile. He thought she was the perfect person to marry. Soon, they had a grand wedding, and everyone was happy. Johnson's parents were excited about their future grandchildren, and Johnson looked forward to starting a new life with his wife. After the wedding celebration, Johnson and Sophia returned home as husband and wife. Johnson was excited to start their life together. He thought about all the happy times they would share. That night, after a relaxing bath, Johnson tried to pull Sophia close. But Sophia gently pushed his hands away. "I'm too tired," she said with a smile. Johnson believed her and let her rest, thinking they would have more time later. Little did Johnson know, Sophia was hiding something. She wasn't ready for the life Johnson wanted. Instead of talking about it, she avoided him. Johnson trusted her and waited, but his heart began to feel uneasy. Days turned into weeks, and Johnson noticed that Sophia always found reasons to avoid getting close to him. One day, he asked her, "Sophia, why do you always seem so distant? Is something wrong?" Sophia smiled and replied, "Oh, nothing's wrong, dear. I just think we should spend more time together. Maybe go on a vacation before we start a family." Johnson agreed, thinking she just wanted more time to adjust. He planned a beautiful trip for them to the countryside. They spent days enjoying the fresh air, taking long walks, and laughing together. Johnson felt hopeful that things would soon change. But even after the vacation, Sophia continued to avoid intimacy. Johnson was patient, but his heart started to feel heavy. Johnson's parents were eager for news of a grandchild. They visited often, asking, "When will we hear the cries of a baby in this house?" Johnson assured them, "It will happen soon. Please be patient." But deep inside, he was troubled. He loved his wife, but he didn't understand why she kept delaying such an important part of their life. Sophia would smile politely when Johnson's parents visited, but avoided their questions. Johnson noticed her unease, but didn't want to upset her. He hoped she would open up to him soon. Sophia came up with an idea to hire a housemaid to help with chores. "It'll make life easier," she told Johnson. He agreed, and soon Ella joined their home. Ella was a young, hard-working girl who always had a bright smile. She cooked delicious meals, cleaned the house, and made sure everything was perfect. Johnson appreciated her efforts and decided to support her education. Ella admired Johnson for his kindness and often looked up to him like a big brother. Little did she know, her life in this household would take an unexpected turn. While Johnson was busy working and taking care of the house, Sophia was hiding a dark secret. When she was younger, she had joined a secret group that forbade its members from having children. Sophia had never told Johnson about this part of her life. She knew that if she broke the group's rules, terrible things could happen to her and her family. But as time passed, the pressure from Johnson and his parents began to weigh heavily on her. She often sat alone in her room, staring at the wall, wondering how long she could keep her secret. Johnson began to feel the weight of his parents' disappointment. Every time they visited, their hopeful faces broke his heart. One evening, his mother said, "Son, we don't have much time left. Please don't let us leave this world without seeing our grandchild." That night, Johnson confronted Sophia. "Sophia, it's been years. My parents are growing older, and I've waited long enough. Please, let's have a child." Sophia avoided his eyes. "I need more time," she whispered. Johnson didn't know how much more time he could give. One night, as Ella was cleaning, she overheard Johnson pleading with Sophia, "Why won't you let me be close to you? I've done everything I can to make you happy." Sophia's voice was cold. "I told you, I'm not ready." Ella felt sorry for Johnson. She admired how hard he worked to keep his family happy, but it seemed like his efforts were never enough. The next day at school, Ella shared what she had overheard with her best friend, Amara. Amara whispered. This is your chance, Ella. Show him you care. Maybe you can be the one to give him what he needs. Ella was shocked by Amara's suggestion. I could never do that, she exclaimed. But Amara persisted. Think about it. You care about him, don't you? And he deserves to be happy. If his wife won't give him a child, maybe you can. Ella tried to push the idea out of her mind, but Amara's words lingered. Over the next few weeks, Amara convinced Ella to buy new dresses and act differently around Johnson. Ella felt nervous about what she was doing. Deep down, she knew it was wrong, but she also couldn't deny her growing feelings for her kind and caring boss. One evening, when Sophia was out, Ella served Johnson dinner. Amara had given her a small packet of powder, saying it would help him relax. Ella hesitated, but eventually added the powder to Johnson's drink. After dinner, she went to his room, wearing one of the dresses Amara had picked out. When Johnson saw her, he was surprised. Ella, what are you doing here? He asked. Ella pretended she was there to clean, but her actions were deliberate. Johnson, affected by the powder, lost control and did something he would later regret deeply. The next morning, Johnson woke up feeling confused and guilty. Memories of the night before flashed in his mind, and he felt ashamed. He couldn't believe what had happened between him and Ella. Ella, on the other hand, tried to act normal. She prepared breakfast and went about her duties as if nothing had happened. Inside, she was nervous and unsure of how Johnson felt about her now. At work, Johnson couldn't focus. His heart was heavy with guilt. What have I done? He thought. That night, he decided to apologize to Ella, but when he tried to speak to her, she simply said, "It's okay, sir. Let's not talk about it." Days turned into weeks, and Johnson tried to move on, but the guilt lingered. Meanwhile, Ella was struggling with her own emotions. She felt torn between her feelings for Johnson and the shame of what had happened. One day, Ella confided in Amara. "I don't know if I can keep this a secret," she said. Amara replied, "You did nothing wrong. Remember, this is your chance to have a better life. If something comes out of this, it might be your blessing." Ella didn't fully understand what Amara meant, but she decided to keep quiet for now. Sophia began noticing a change in Johnson. He seemed distant and distracted, often lost in thought. She wondered if something was wrong but didn't press him about it. One evening, as she walked past the kitchen, she saw Ella humming happily while preparing dinner. Sophia narrowed her eyes. She seems too cheerful lately, she thought. Sophia began paying closer attention to Ella, watching her interactions with Johnson. The tension in the house grew, though no one dared to address it directly. A month later, Ella began feeling unwell. She was often nauseous in the mornings and felt unusually tired. Worried, she visited the school nurse, who suggested she take a pregnancy test. The test confirmed her fears. Ella was pregnant. She was shocked and didn't know what to do. That evening, she sat in her room, holding the test in her trembling hands. The next day, Ella decided to tell Johnson. She waited until Sophia had gone out, then approached him nervously. "Sir," she said quietly, "I need to talk to you." Ella handed Johnson the positive pregnancy test. His face turned pale as he realized what it meant. "Ella, how could this happen?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "I didn't plan this," Ella said, tears streaming down her face. "But it's the truth. I'm pregnant, and the baby is yours." Johnson was speechless. He felt a mix of fear, guilt, and anger. He knew this would destroy his already fragile marriage, but he couldn't ignore the responsibility he now had toward Ella and the unborn child. That evening, Ella decided to tell Sophia herself. She handed Sophia the test and said, "I need to tell you something important." Sophia stared at the test, her hands shaking. "What is this?" she demanded. "I'm pregnant," Ella said softly, "and the baby is Johnson's." Sophia's face turned red with rage. She threw the test on the ground and screamed, "How dare you? You betrayed me." She turned to Johnson, who was standing silently in the corner. "And you? How could you do this to me?" Sophia stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. She wandered the streets, her mind racing with anger and betrayal. She found a bar and began drinking heavily, trying to drown her pain. By midnight, Sophia was lying by the roadside, drunk and unconscious. A young man driving by saw her and stopped. He carried her into his car, but instead of helping her, he took advantage of her vulnerability. The man left her by the roadside afterward, unaware of the impact his actions would have on her life. When Sophia woke up the next morning, she felt sick and disoriented. She couldn't remember much of what had happened, but she knew something was wrong. A few weeks later, Sophia began experiencing symptoms that led her to visit a doctor. The doctor confirmed she was pregnant. Sophia was horrified. "This can't be happening," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. She returned home and locked herself in her room, refusing to speak to anyone. Johnson knocked on the door, asking if she was okay, but she shouted, "Leave me alone." That night, as Sophia sat alone in her room, crying, she felt a strange presence. Turning around, she saw the Queen Mother of her occult group standing behind her. "You have broken the rules," the Queen Mother said coldly. "You were warned never to have a child, but now you are pregnant. You will face the consequences." Sophia begged for mercy, but the Queen Mother vanished, leaving her with a chilling warning. "You will run mad and the man responsible will die." Sophia's mental state began to deteriorate. She heard voices in her head and saw shadows that weren't there. She avoided Johnson and Ella, fearing they would notice her strange behavior. Meanwhile, Johnson focused on caring for Ella, who was now visibly pregnant. Despite everything, he felt a sense of responsibility toward her and the baby. Sophia's world continued to crumble, and the weight of her secrets became unbearable. Sophia's mental state worsened as the days went by. She began speaking to herself, pacing the house aimlessly, and even screaming at invisible figures. Johnson grew worried, but Sophia refused to let him help her. One evening, she ran out of the house barefoot, laughing and crying at the same time. The neighbors gathered as Sophia shouted strange words and tore at her clothes. Johnson and Ella watched helplessly as Sophia's condition spiraled out of control. The villagers whispered among themselves, saying, "This is a punishment from the gods." Johnson didn't know what to believe, but he felt guilty for Sophia's suffering. Far away, the young man who had taken advantage of Sophia also began experiencing strange events. He fell gravely ill, with no doctor able to diagnose his condition. Within days, he passed away suddenly, leaving his family in shock. The news of his mysterious death reached Sophia's occult group, and they confirmed it was the curse fulfilling its promise. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to wander the streets in her madness, muttering about the rules she had broken and the punishment she faced. With Sophia no longer at home, Johnson was left to take care of Ella. Despite the chaos, he tried to make the best of the situation. He prepared for the arrival of the baby, buying clothes and setting up a small nursery. Ella, although grateful for Johnson's support, felt uneasy about their situation. "What will happen to Sophia?" she asked one evening. "I don't know," Johnson admitted, "but I can't abandon her, even if she's lost her mind." Ella admired his sense of responsibility, but secretly hoped for a future where they could be happy together. Months later, Ella went into labor. Johnson rushed her to the hospital, where she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When Johnson held his son for the first time, tears filled his eyes. "He's beautiful," he whispered. They named the baby David, a name that symbolized strength and resilience. Despite the challenges they had faced, Johnson felt a glimmer of hope for the future. Ella, too, was filled with joy as she cradled her newborn. For the first time in a long while, the house was filled with happiness. One stormy evening, as Johnson was rocking baby David to sleep, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Sophia standing there, drenched from the rain and looking more disheveled than ever. "Johnson," she said weakly, "I've come back." Johnson was stunned. "Sophia, are you okay?" She shook her head. "No, but I had nowhere else to go." Johnson let her in, knowing it was the right thing to do. He hoped he could help her recover, but he also knew it wouldn't be easy. Having Sophia back in the house created tension. She was unpredictable, sometimes calm and quiet, other times angry and irrational. Ella tried her best to stay out of Sophia's way, but Sophia often glared at her and muttered insults under her breath. "You stole my husband," she would say, even though Ella had no intention of doing so. Johnson felt torn between caring for Sophia and protecting Ella and David. He spent many sleepless nights trying to keep the peace. Word of Sophia's madness and Johnson's new child spread throughout the community. Some people pitied Sophia, while others criticized Johnson for moving on too quickly. How can he bring another woman into his home while his wife is suffering? They whispered. Johnson ignored the gossip, focusing instead on his responsibilities. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he hoped to create a better future for his family. One night, Sophia woke up screaming. Johnson and Ella rushed to her side, trying to calm her down. Through her tears, Sophia began confessing everything. "I joined an occult group when I was young," she said. "They told me I could never have children. If I did, I would go mad, and the man in my life would die." Johnson was horrified. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" he asked. "I was scared," Sophia admitted. "I didn't want to lose you, but I also couldn't leave the group." Her words left Johnson speechless. Determined to save Sophia, Johnson decided to seek help from a spiritual leader in the community. He visited an elder named Baba Ade, known for his wisdom and ability to break curses. After listening to Johnson's story, Baba Ade said, "This is a grave situation, but it is not hopeless. To free Sophia, you must perform a cleansing ritual and ensure she completely renounces the occult group." Johnson agreed, even though he knew it would be a difficult process. Baba Ade came to the house and prepared for the ritual. He lit candles, burned herbs, and chanted prayers to cleanse Sophia's spirit. Sophia was resistant at first, but Johnson convinced her to participate. As the ritual progressed, Sophia began to scream and thrash, as if something inside her was fighting back. Baba Ade remained calm, continuing the prayers until Sophia collapsed in exhaustion. When she woke up, she seemed calmer and more at peace. "Thank you," she whispered to Baba Ade. After the ritual, Sophia's condition improved. She began to speak more coherently and seemed calmer, though she still struggled with guilt and regret. Johnson felt a mix of relief and apprehension, wondering if this change would last. Ella, now a mother to baby David, kept her distance from Sophia but remained kind. She didn't want to add to the tension in the house. Instead, she focused on caring for David and supporting Johnson. One afternoon, Sophia approached Ella. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice trembling. "I blamed you for everything, but the truth is, I'm the one who made mistakes." Ella was stunned. She nodded politely, unsure of what to say. One evening, Johnson and Sophia sat together in the living room. Sophia began to cry. "I'm so sorry for everything, Johnson. For lying to you, for hiding my past, for all the pain I caused." Johnson sighed deeply. "Sophia, I won't lie. What you did hurt me, but I also understand that you were scared and didn't know how to handle it." He took her hand. "We've both made mistakes, but I want us to move forward. For our family's sake." Sophia nodded, feeling a small sense of hope for the first time in years. Despite the progress in their household, the village continued to gossip. "Did you hear? Sophia is back in the house, but Johnson is raising a child with the maid," they whispered. Johnson ignored the rumors, focusing on keeping peace in his home. He told Sophia and Ella, "Let them talk. What matters is how we handle things here." Sophia agreed, though it pained her to hear people speak about her in such a negative light. Ella stayed quiet, focusing on her studies and caring for David. One day, Ella's friend Amara visited her at school. "So, how's life as the boss's second wife?" Amara joked, laughing. Ella frowned. "It's not like that, Amara. I'm just trying to raise my son and keep the peace." Amara shook her head. "You're too soft, Ella. If I were you, I'd demand more from Johnson. You deserve better." Ella didn't respond, but Amara's words lingered in her mind. As the weeks passed, Sophia started attending community events and seeking ways to rebuild her life. She joined a women's group in the village, where she shared her story and found support from other women who had faced difficulties. One of the women, Auntie Kimmy, told her, "Your past doesn't define you, Sophia. What matters is what you do with your future." Sophia took those words to heart. She decided to focus on healing and being a better person, not just for herself but for Johnson and Ella as well. Ella couldn't shake Amara's words. One evening, as she watched Johnson playing with David, she wondered, what is my place in this family? Am I just the maid who happened to have a child, or do I mean more to him? She decided to talk to Johnson about her feelings. Sir, she began hesitantly, do you see me as just a caretaker for David, or do you see a future for us? Johnson looked surprised. Ella, you're more than just a caretaker. You're part of this family now, but I also need time to figure things out. It's not easy balancing everything. Ella nodded, but her doubts remained. One evening, Johnson made an announcement that shocked both Sophia and Ella. I've been thinking a lot about our situation, he said, and I believe the best way forward is for us to work together as a family. He turned to Ella. Ella, I want to make things right. Will you marry me? Sophia gasped, her heart sinking. Ella was equally stunned. Marry you? What about Sophia? She asked. Johnson sighed. Sophia and I are no longer the same. She knows that. But I want to take responsibility for you and David. Sophia listened in silence, her heart heavy with pain. That night, she wrote a letter to Johnson. In it, she said, Dear Johnson, I've realized that holding on to this marriage is not fair to either of us. You deserve happiness, and so does Ella. I will always care for you, but I think it's time for me to let go. Please take care of yourself and David. Sophia. The next morning, she packed her bags and left the house without saying a word. With Sophia gone, Johnson felt a mix of relief and sadness. He decided to honor Sophia's wish and move forward. A few weeks later, he and Ella had a small wedding ceremony with close friends and family. Ella was overjoyed but also nervous about the new responsibilities that came with being a wife. Johnson reassured her, saying, We'll take it one day at a time. With Sophia gone and their marriage official, Johnson and Ella started their new life together. They focused on raising David and building a happy home. Ella began taking classes to improve her skills, hoping to contribute more to the family. Johnson supported her every step of the way, proud of her determination. Their life wasn't perfect, but they faced their challenges together, determined to make the best of their situation.